When I woke up that morning in Lisbon, my son was gone. His bed was empty, sheets pulled tight like nobody had ever slept there. His suitcase, gone. And when I reached for my wallet on the nightstand, my hands found nothing but air. I stood there in that hotel room, 71 years old, staring at the space where my boy should have been. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. The kind that crawls into your chest and squeezes. You ever trust someone so completely that the idea of them betraying you doesn't even cross your mind? That was me. I trusted my son with my life. Turns out, that was my biggest mistake. I stumbled to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, told myself I was overreacting. Maybe he went for breakfast. Maybe he's downstairs waiting. But deep down, in that place where a father knows things he doesn't want to know, I already understood the truth. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. I threw on yesterday's clothes and rushed to the lobby. The woman at the front desk smiled at me like everything was normal. I asked about Dorian, my son, and her smile faded. She checked her computer, clicked a few keys, then looked up with those pitying eyes people give you when they're about to wreck your world. Mr. Montrose, your son checked out early this morning. Around 5:30. He took a taxi to the airport. The words hit me like fists. Checked out. Airport. Without me. That's impossible, I said. We're traveling together. There must be some mistake. But there was no mistake. She showed me the checkout confirmation. His signature. His name. Mine wasn't anywhere on that paper. I tried calling him. Straight to voicemail. Tried again. Same thing. By the third attempt, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the phone. That's when I checked my pockets properly. Really checked. My credit cards, gone. The cash I'd withdrawn for emergencies, gone. Even my return ticket, the one I'd kept folded in my jacket pocket, gone. He didn't just leave me. He stripped me clean and abandoned me in a country where I didn't speak the language, didn't know a single soul, had no way to get home. I sank into one of those lobby chairs, the fancy kind that's supposed to make you feel important. But right then, I felt smaller than I'd ever felt in my entire life. Smaller than when my wife Elise died. Smaller than the nights I worked 3 jobs to put that boy through college. A father's love can make you blind. I learned that the hard way. But what my son didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that abandoning me in that foreign city would become the biggest mistake of his life. Because when you strip a man down to nothing, you better make sure he doesn't know how to build himself back up. Have you ever had someone you loved betray you so deeply it changed who you are? Drop a comment and let me know, because what happened next tested everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and survival. He called me Harold that night before we left, not Dad. I didn't know it then, but that small change was the beginning of everything I'd lose. I raised Dorian alone from the time he was 14. His mother, Elise, died on a Tuesday. Heart just stopped while she was folding laundry in our bedroom. One minute she was humming some old song, the next she was gone. They tell you grief gets easier. They're lying. It just gets different. Quieter, maybe. But it never really leaves. After Elise passed, that boy became my whole world. I worked double shifts at the furniture shop during the week, took custom orders on weekends. Every penny went into making sure he had what he needed. New shoes when his toes pressed against the front. School supplies. A used car when he turned 16 so he could get to his part-time job. I never remarried. Couldn't even think about it. Some men move on, that wasn't me. I had Dorian, and that was enough. More than enough. He was a good kid back then. Smart as a whip. Used to help me in the workshop after school, handing me tools, asking questions about wood grain and joinery. He had his mother's eyes, sharp, curious, always looking for answers. But somewhere between high school and college, something shifted. He got ambitious. Not the good kind that makes you work hard. The kind that makes you forget where you came from. He started taking business classes, wearing suits that cost more than my monthly rent, talking about investments and market shares like they were more important than people. He made friends with guys who measured success in dollar signs instead of handshakes. I was proud, don't get me wrong. What father wouldn't be? My son, the businessman. My son, the success story. The kid from the modest house with the carpenter dad who made something of himself. But pride can blind you to what you're losing while you celebrate what you've gained. The phone calls got shorter. Visits became holidays only, then just Christmas, then just Thanksgiving if I was lucky. When he did show up, he'd spend half the time on his phone, taking calls from people who apparently couldn't survive a few hours without him. And then one day, during dinner at my place, I'd made his favorite, pot roast with all the fixings. He called me Harold for the first time. Not Dad. Harold. Harold, could you pass the salt? Just like that. Casual. Like I was his colleague instead of the man who raised him. Who held him when he cried about his mother. Who taught him to ride a bike and tie a tie and treat people with respect. I passed him the salt. Didn't say anything. What was I supposed to say? You're breaking my heart with your words, son? That's not how men like me were raised to talk. He got married to a woman named Victoria. Nice enough, I suppose, though she looked at my calloused hands like they might dirty her expensive clothes. They bought a house in one of those neighborhoods where the lawns look painted on and everyone drives cars that cost more than most people make in 2 years. Had a grandson I barely knew. Saw him maybe twice a year. The boy called me Mr. Montrose. When Dorian invited me to Portugal, something in my chest loosened for the first time in years. Maybe he was coming back to me. Maybe success had finally satisfied whatever hunger was eating him from the inside, and now he had room for his old man again. I should have known better. Should have seen the warning signs. But hope makes fools of desperate fathers. What happened between us didn't start in that Lisbon hotel room. It started years before, in all those small moments when he chose money over memory, status over son, and everything over the man who gave him everything. The invitation came on a Thursday. I remember because Thursdays were my grocery days, and I was putting away cans of soup when my phone rang. Hey, Harold. His voice sounded good. Upbeat. Almost warm. I've got a business seminar in Portugal next month. Thought maybe you'd want to come along. Make it a father-son trip. You know, like old times. Like old times. Those 3 words hooked me faster than a fish on a line. I said yes before he finished talking. Didn't even ask about dates or details. Just yes, yes, I'd love to. When do we leave? For the next 4 weeks, I was a different man. Lighter. I caught myself whistling while I worked. Even dug out my old suitcase from the garage, the brown leather one Elise bought me 30 years ago, and polished it until it shined. I packed carefully. 3 shirts. 2 pairs of pants. My good shoes. The small brass compass Elise gave me on our 10th anniversary. So you'll always find your way home, she'd said, laughing as she pressed it into my palm. I tucked it in my jacket pocket. Didn't know then how badly I'd need it. The flight was long, but I didn't mind. Dorian sat beside me, working on his laptop most of the way, but he'd occasionally look over and ask if I needed anything. Water. A snack. If I was comfortable. Small gestures, sure. But when you've been starving for your child's attention, even crumbs feel like a feast. Portugal was beautiful. Lisbon sprawled beneath us as we landed, red roofs and blue water and streets that curved like rivers. Our hotel sat in the old part of the city, all tile and charm and windows that opened onto narrow cobblestone alleys. The first 2 days were perfect. We visited museums where Dorian actually seemed interested in what I had to say about the old craftsmanship in the furniture displays. We ate at sidewalk cafes, drank coffee so strong it tasted like earth and smoke. We even laughed. Real laughs, not the polite kind you give strangers. I thought I had my son back. Third day, things changed. Started small. He got a phone call during lunch, stepped away for 20 minutes. Came back distracted, kept checking his watch. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine. Just work stuff." But his jaw was tight. His eyes wouldn't meet mine. Fourth day was worse. More calls. Longer absences. When I tried to make conversation, he'd answer in half sentences, his mind clearly somewhere else. That night, I lay in my hotel bed listening to him talk in hushed tones in the bathroom. Couldn't make out words, just tone. Urgent. Almost aggressive. When he came out, I pretended to be asleep. Fifth morning, I woke to silence. Not the peaceful kind. The wrong kind. The kind that screams at you even though there's no sound. His bed was empty. Sheets pulled tight. Suitcase gone from the corner where it had sat the night before. I told myself not to panic. Maybe he had an early meeting. Maybe he left a note I hadn't found yet. But when I reached for my wallet, my hands found nothing. And when I finally made it downstairs to that hotel lobby, when that woman told me he'd checked out, taken a taxi to the airport, left me behind like I was nothing, that's when I understood. The trip was never about reconnecting. It was about getting rid of me. Far from home, far from anyone who knew me, far from any way to fight back. My son didn't just abandon me. He'd planned it. Carefully. Coldly. Like I was a problem to be solved instead of the man who gave him life. When I woke up the fifth morning, the room felt different. Too quiet, too empty. I just didn't know yet that quiet was the sound of my whole world ending. The panic came in waves. First denial. Then anger. Then this sick, hollow feeling that settled in my stomach like stones. I searched the hotel room top to bottom. Checked under beds, in drawers, even in the trash. Maybe he left a note. Maybe he left something. But there was nothing except the smell of his cologne lingering in the bathroom and the indent in his pillow from where his head had rested. The hotel staff tried to be helpful. The manager, a thin man with kind eyes, brought me to his office and let me use the phone. I called Dorian 15 times in a row. Every call went straight to voicemail. On the 16th try, I left a message. "Son, I don't know what's happening, but please call me back. I'm stuck here. I need help." My voice cracked on that last word. Help. 71 years old and begging my own child for help. He never called back. I sat in that manager's office for 2 hours, trying to figure out what to do. The manager spoke decent English. He explained that without money or identification, I couldn't even book a new room. The one Dorian had paid for expired that day at noon. "You have no credit cards?" he asked gently. "No cash?" I shook my head. My son had everything. The way he looked at me then, I'll never forget it. Pity mixed with something else. Recognition, maybe. Like he'd seen this story before. He made some calls. Contacted the American embassy. Explained my situation. They said they'd help, but it would take time. Days, maybe weeks. They needed to verify my identity, process emergency documents, arrange transportation. Meanwhile, I had nowhere to go. No money for food. No money for shelter. "There's a church," the manager said quietly. "Sao Roque. Father Miguel runs a program for travelers in trouble. It's not much, but they might be able to help." He wrote down the address and drew me a map. Before I left, he reached into his wallet and pressed a €20 note into my hand. "For food," he said. "I'm sorry about your son. I took the money because I had no choice. Pride doesn't fill an empty stomach." The walk to the church felt like walking through water. Everything moved too slow and too fast at the same time. People passed me on the street, tourists with cameras, locals with purpose, and I was invisible. Just another old man shuffling along with a battered suitcase. Sao Roque sat on a hill. White walls. Simple. I pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped into cool darkness. A priest was lighting candles near the altar. He turned when he heard my footsteps, his face shadowed but his eyes bright. "Can I help you?" he asked in accented English. And that's when I broke. Right there in that church, in front of a stranger, I told him everything. About Dorian. About being abandoned. About having nothing and no way home. I cried like I hadn't cried since Elise died. Great, heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep and old and raw. Father Miguel didn't interrupt. Didn't judge. When I finally stopped, when the tears dried up and left only exhaustion, he put his hand on my shoulder. "You're safe here," he said simply. "We'll figure this out." That night, I slept in a church basement on a cot with springs that dug into my back. There were 6 other men down there. One snored. Another mumbled in his sleep. A third sat in the corner writing in a journal by flashlight. I lay there staring at the ceiling, holding Elisa's compass in my hand, thinking about how a life can change in a single morning. My son was gone. My money was gone. My ticket home was gone. But I was still here. Still breathing. Still alive. I didn't know it yet, but that night was the last time I'd ever be the man I was before. The man who believed family meant something. The man who thought love was enough. Tomorrow, I'd start becoming someone else. Someone harder. Someone who understood that the world doesn't care about your broken heart. I dialed his number one last time before my phone died. It rang once. Then silence. Not even voicemail. Just empty air where my son used to be. The first few days in Lisbon blurred together like a bad dream you can't quite shake even after waking up. I stayed at Sao Roque Church, sleeping in that basement with men who'd lost everything. Jobs, families, countries, hope. Father Miguel brought me bread and coffee every morning. We'd sit in the small courtyard behind the church, and he'd ask how I was doing. Not in that fake way people ask when they don't really want to know. He actually listened. "Your son," he said on the 3rd morning. "You still love him, yes?" I stared at my coffee. "I don't know what I feel anymore." That's normal. Betrayal is confusing. It makes us question everything we thought we knew. He paused. "But confusion will pass. What remains after? That's what matters." I wanted to ask what he meant, but a volunteer called him away to handle something inside. The embassy process was slower than watching paint dry. I had to fill out forms, wait for verification, prove I was who I said I was without any identification. They needed to contact my bank back home, confirm my identity through old records, process emergency documentation. "These things take time," the embassy worker told me. Young guy, probably mid-20s, bored expression like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Maybe 2 weeks. Maybe more." 2 weeks. 14 days minimum of sleeping in a church basement, eating donated bread, wearing the same 3 shirts on rotation. I thought about calling someone back home for help. But who? I didn't have many friends. Never made time for them. Too busy raising Dorian. Too busy working. My neighbors were acquaintances, not the kind of people you call when you're stranded in Europe. So I waited. And while I waited, I learned. Learned that the man who snored in the basement was a former teacher from Syria who'd lost his family in the war. Learned that the quiet guy writing in the journal was a Portuguese carpenter who'd gambled away his business and his marriage. Learned that rock bottom looks different for everyone but feels the same, like drowning in air. Father Miguel checked on me daily. One afternoon, he found me sitting on the church steps, staring at nothing. "You're thinking about going home," he said. "Wasn't a question. If I ever get home." "You will. And when you do, what then?" I didn't have an answer. He sat beside me, groaned a little like old men do when their knees remind them of their age. "Can I tell you something I've learned from people who come through here?" I nodded. When someone takes everything from you, they think they've taken your life, your purpose, your power. He looked at me with those sharp eyes. But what they don't understand is that freedom begins where comfort ends. When you have nothing left to lose, you have everything to gain. I let those words sit, turned them over in my mind like stones in a river. "My son took everything," I said quietly. "My money, my dignity, my home, probably, knowing him. Maybe," Father Miguel agreed. "But he didn't take your hands, didn't take your knowledge, didn't take your ability to rebuild." He stood, brushed dust off his pants. "You're a carpenter, yes? You told me that. Was long time ago. A carpenter is always a carpenter. The skill doesn't leave just because the tools do." That night, I lay on that cot thinking about his words. About my hands, scarred and calloused from decades of work. About everything I'd built with them. Furniture, a home, a life. Dorian thought he'd destroyed me. Thought leaving me here would be the end of Harold Montrose. He was wrong. 3 weeks later, I finally got my emergency documents. The embassy arranged a charity flight, basically a seat on a cargo plane heading back to the States. Not comfortable, but I didn't care. I was going home. Father Miguel walked me to the taxi the morning I left. He pressed something into my hand. A small wooden cross, carved by hand. "Remember," he said, "freedom begins where comfort ends." I held that cross the entire flight home. 13 hours of rattling cargo holds and thin blankets and stale sandwiches. But I didn't complain. I was alive. I was going home. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known sitting in that plane, was that home wasn't home anymore. That Dorian had been busy while I was gone. That the betrayal in Lisbon was just the beginning. When I boarded that charity flight home, I thought the worst was behind me. I was wrong. The real nightmare was waiting for me in my own driveway. Retry. The plane landed on a gray Thursday morning. Same airport I'd left from 5 weeks earlier, but nothing felt the same. I felt older, harder, like something inside me had calcified during those nights in that church basement. I took a bus from the airport. Couldn't afford a cab. Sat in the back watching familiar streets roll past, holding my battered suitcase between my knees. The compass was still in my jacket pocket, warm against my chest. My house sat on Maple Street. Small, brick, with a garden Elise had planted 30 years ago. Rose bushes she'd babed through every winter. A porch I'd built with my own hands when Dorian was 10. The taxi dropped me at the curb. I stood there for a minute, just looking. Something felt wrong but I couldn't place it. Then I noticed, the curtains were different. New ones. White instead of the blue checkered ones I'd had for years. I walked up the driveway, my heart starting to hammer. Put my key in the lock. It didn't fit. Tried again. Maybe I was doing it wrong, maybe the lock was stiff. But no. The key wouldn't even slide in. Someone had changed the locks. I knocked. Waited. Knocked again, harder. A man opened the door. Mid-40s, confused expression, holding a coffee mug. "Can I help you?" he asked. "This is my house," I said. My voice sounded strange. Tight. His confusion deepened. No, sir. My wife and I bought this place 3 weeks ago. From a Dorian Montrose. Said it was his father's estate. Estate. Like I was dead. I'm Harold Montrose, I said. This is my house. I built that porch. My wife planted those roses. The man's face shifted. Not angry. Sad. Like he suddenly understood he was standing in the middle of someone else's tragedy. Look, I don't know what's going on here, but we have papers. Legal documents. The sale was legitimate. He paused. You should probably talk to a lawyer. He closed the door. Gently, but firmly. I heard the deadbolt slide into place. I stood on that porch, my porch, for a long time. Then I walked to the backyard. The rose bushes were still there, overgrown but alive. I knelt beside them, ran my fingers over the thorns. Elise had planted these the summer before she died. We'd spent a whole weekend digging holes, mixing soil, arguing playfully about spacing. They'll outlive us both, she'd said, laughing. She was right. My neighbor, Nora, came out of her house when she saw me. She was 70-something, had lived next door for 20 years. Harold. Her hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God. We thought you were. Dorian said you'd decided to stay in Europe permanently. Said you'd met someone. That you were selling everything to start over. He lied, I said simply. Her eyes filled with tears. That boy. That terrible boy. What did he do? She brought me inside, made me tea, let me use her phone. I tried calling my bank. Frozen accounts. Dorian had power of attorney, something I'd signed years ago when he convinced me it was just in case something happened. He'd cleaned me out. Every dollar I'd saved over 50 years of work. I tried calling him. Disconnected number. He'd erased me. Sold my house, took my money, changed his number, and disappeared. That night, I slept on a park bench 2 streets from the home I'd lost. Used my suitcase as a pillow. Stared up at stars that looked nothing like the ones in Lisbon. A cop woke me around 3 in the morning. Young guy, probably fresh out of the academy. Can't sleep here, sir, he said. Not mean, just doing his job. Where should I sleep? I asked. Wasn't being smart. Genuinely wanted to know. He looked uncomfortable. There's a shelter on 5th Street. They might have space. But I didn't go to the shelter. I walked instead. Walked until dawn broke over the city I'd lived in my entire life. The city that suddenly felt foreign as Lisbon had. Father Miguel's words kept echoing in my head. Freedom begins where comfort ends. I'd lost everything. House, money, son, dignity. Everything except my hands and my knowledge and a stubborn refusal to die on a park bench. If Dorian thought abandoning me would be the end of my story, he was about to learn he'd only written the beginning of his own nightmare. Because a man with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous kind of free. That morning, watching the sun rise over the city, I made myself a promise. I'd rebuild. Not for revenge. Revenge is exhausting. For myself. To prove that Harold Montrose wasn't done yet. That night, staring at the house I built with my bare hands, I made a promise. If I rise again, it'll be without him. And rise I did, in ways he never saw coming. I found work the second week back. Not easy work, not dignified work, but work. A small carpentry shop on the edge of town needed someone to clean up after the real craftsmen went home. Sweep sawdust, organize screws, take out trash. The owner was a guy named Keegan. Mid-30s, covered in tattoos, played loud music while he worked. He looked at my calloused hands when I asked for the job. You know wood? He asked. Used to. Used to doesn't count. You know it now. I picked up a piece of oak from his workbench. Ran my thumb along the grain. Red oak. Probably from the Midwest. Good density. Take stain well, but you need to use wood filler on the pores first, or it'll look blotchy. Keegan stared at me. You're not here to sweep floors. I'll take whatever you're offering. He hired me to sweep floors. But within a week, I was back at a workbench. My hands remembered everything my mind thought it had forgotten. Dovetail joints. Mortise and tenon. How to read wood like a language. Keegan watched me work on a custom bookshelf for a client. Didn't say anything, just watched. When I finished, he ran his hand over the joints. That's master-level work, he said quietly. Why are you pretending to be a janitor? So I told him. Not everything, but enough. About my son. About Lisbon. About coming home to nothing. He didn't offer pity. Just nodded. Worlds full of people who take. Rare to find someone who builds. He paused. How'd you like to be a partner? I laughed. Couldn't help it. Partner? I don't have a dime to my name. Don't need money. Need skill. Need integrity. I got the shop and the clients. You got 50 years of knowledge I don't have. He stuck out his hand. 50-50 split. Montrose and Keegan Designs. What do you say? I shook his hand. Felt calluses meeting calluses. The grip of builders. That handshake changed everything. Over the next 2 years, we grew. Started with custom furniture. Then got into restoration work. Then high-end corporate installations. Keegan handled the business side. I handled the craft and trained apprentices. Young people started coming to us. Kids who wanted to learn real skills instead of staring at screens. We taught them discipline, patience, how to turn raw lumber into something that would outlast them. The money came slowly, then faster. We moved to a bigger space, hired more workers, built a reputation for quality that spread through word of mouth. I rented a small apartment above a bakery. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Filled it with furniture I'd built myself. Slept on a bed frame made from reclaimed barn wood. Some nights I'd sit by the window with a cup of coffee, listening to the city below, thinking about the church basement in Lisbon. About Father Miguel. About how losing everything had somehow freed me to become someone stronger. I thought about Dorian sometimes. Wondered where he was. What he'd done with the money he stole. Whether he ever thought about his old man sleeping on park benches while he counted stolen cash. But mostly, I didn't think about him at all. Thinking about people who've hurt you gives them power they don't deserve. 3 years after I stepped off that cargo plane, Keegan and I bought property. A good-sized lot in the industrial district. We designed a new workshop from the ground up. 60 feet by 80 feet. Huge windows. Proper ventilation. Room to grow. When the city put my old property up for auction, Dorian had defaulted on the taxes after burning through my money on bad investments. I was there. Sat in the back of the auction hall with a baseball cap pulled low. The bidding started. I waited. Watched other people compete for the land where my house used to stand. They tore down the house itself, but the lot was valuable. When the bidding slowed, I raised my paddle. Someone bid against me. I went higher. They dropped out. Sold, the auctioneer said, to bidder number 47. I bought back my own land for less than Dorian had sold it for. Turns out stolen money disappears faster than earned money. We built our new workshop there. Right on the spot where my house used to sit. Where Elisa's roses used to grow. I transplanted some of the surviving bushes to the front entrance. The sign went up on a bright Tuesday morning. Keegan and I stood back, looking at it. Montrose and Keegan Craftworks, founded by Harold Montrose, 2023. Your son ever comes back, Keegan said. This is going to hurt. Good, I said. 3 years later, a familiar car pulled into the driveway of the workshop, and my heart didn't freeze. It recognized what it already knew was coming. My son had finally found me. The car was expensive, black, shiny, the kind that announces you've got money before you even step out. I was standing near the loading dock, reviewing plans with one of our apprentices when I heard the engine. Something in my chest tightened. Not fear. Recognition. The way you know a storm's coming before the first raindrop falls. Dorian stepped out. He looked older, thinner. His suit was still expensive, but it hung on him different. Like it was wearing him instead of the other way around. He didn't see me right away. He stood there staring at the building, at the sign, his mouth slightly open. Color drained from his face like someone had pulled a plug. I dismissed the apprentice and walked toward him. My legs were steady. My hands weren't shaking. Funny how you imagine these moments during sleepless nights, and then when they finally arrive, you feel nothing but calm. Hello, Dorian. He spun around. For a second, I thought he might run. His eyes went wide, then narrow, then wide again. Processing. Trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Dad. His voice cracked. This can't be real. It's real. I crossed my arms. You looking for someone? I thought you were. He couldn't finish the sentence. Dead? Gone? Still rotting in Lisbon? I kept my voice level. Sorry to disappoint. He looked at the building again, at the sign with my name in bold letters. How did you work? Actual work. The kind you do with your hands instead of stealing from your father. That landed. His face flushed. I can explain. Don't bother. I turned to walk back inside. If you're here to beg, save your breath. If you're here to apologize, I don't want it. If you're here for money, I'd laugh, but I'm too tired. Wait. He grabbed my arm. I looked down at his hand until he let go. Please. Just listen. Against my better judgment, I stopped. Something in his face, desperation maybe, or genuine regret, made me pause. 5 minutes, I said. Then you leave. We sat on the bench outside the workshop. The same spot where Elisa's roses used to bloom. Some of them still did, transplanted and stubborn as the memory of the woman who planted them. Dorian stared at his hands. Expensive watch catching sunlight. Manicured nails. Hands that had never built anything. I screwed up, he said quietly. Everything. The money's gone. The house. Victoria left me. My business partners sued me. I lost it all. Good. He flinched. I was desperate. I'd made bad investments and I thought if I could access your accounts, I could fix everything. It was supposed to be temporary. Temporary. My laugh was cold. You left me in a foreign country with no money, no way home, and you sold my house. That's not temporary. That's calculated. I know. Tears filled his eyes. Real ones, I think. I know. I was stupid. I was scared. I thought I could make it right before you got back, but everything collapsed and what? You couldn't face what you'd done, so you just pretended I didn't exist. I leaned back. I slept in a church basement, Dorian. Ate donated bread. Came home to find strangers living in the house I built for your mother. He was crying now. Full-on sobbing. Shoulders shaking. Snot running into his expensive tie. People walked past. Some of our workers heading to lunch. They glanced over, kept moving. Nobody interrupted. I hate myself, he whispered. Every day. I hate what I did to you. You should. We sat in silence. Birds sang. Traffic hummed in the distance. The world kept turning like it always does, indifferent to personal tragedies and tearful reunions. I don't expect forgiveness, he finally said. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know, I'm sorry. Truly sorry. And if there's any way I can make this right. There isn't. More silence. But, I said slowly, and his head snapped up, if you want to learn how to build something instead of destroying it, the door's open. We need workers. Pay's not great at first. You'd start at the bottom like everyone else. He stared at me. You'd let me work here? Not for me. For Keegan. For the business. You'd be just another worker. No special treatment. No shortcuts. You show up late, you're fired. You steal, you're fired. You disrespect anyone here, you're fired. I met his eyes. Clear. Yes. God, yes. Thank you. Don't thank me. Show me. Monday, 7 a.m. Wear clothes you don't mind ruining. I stood up. Started walking back inside. Dad. I paused but didn't turn around. Why? His voice was small. Broken. Why would you give me a chance after what I did? I thought about Father Miguel. About the men in that church basement who'd lost everything. About how easy it is to kick someone when they're down, and how much harder it is to offer a hand up. Because someone did it for me, I said. And because you're still my son. Even if you forgot I was your father. I walked inside and didn't look back. He said he wanted to make things right, but his eyes told another story, a story I'd seen before in the mirror after Elise died. The look of a man drowning who's not sure he wants to be saved. Monday morning came. 7 a.m. sharp. I half expected Dorian not to show. Figured the weekend would give him time to convince himself he was too good for manual labor, too smart for starting over. But at 6:55, that black car pulled into the lot again. He got out wearing jeans and an old t-shirt. Still looked expensive, the jeans probably cost $200, but he was trying. Keegan met him at the door. I'd briefed him the week before, told him what happened, what I was offering. Keegan had just nodded. Your call, boss. But if he screws up, he's out. I don't care whose kid he is. I watched from the second-floor office window as Keegan put Dorian to work. Started him on the worst job, sanding old furniture in prep for refinishing. Boring work. Hard on the hands. The kind of thing that makes you question your life choices around hour 3. Dorian lasted until lunch. Then he left. He quit. I asked Keegan. Didn't say. Just put down the sandpaper and walked out. I felt something twist in my chest. Disappointment, maybe. Or relief that I'd been right about him after all. But then at 1 p.m., he came back. Brought lunch for himself and kept working. Next day, same thing. He showed up early, worked hard, didn't complain. His hands started blistering by Wednesday. By Friday, they were bleeding through bandages. You need to take care of those, I told him when I saw them. I'm fine. You're not. Those get infected and you'll be useless. I tossed him a better pair of gloves. Use these. And stop trying to prove something. I'm not trying to prove anything. Yes, you are. To me or to yourself, I don't know. But working yourself bloody doesn't fix what you did. He looked at me then. Really looked. Then what does? Time. Consistency. Showing up when it's hard. That's how you build trust back. One day at a time, like building furniture. One joint at a time, one piece at a time. Weeks turned into months. Dorian kept showing up. Moved from sanding to basic assembly. Started learning joints. Made mistakes, lots of them. Scrapped more wood than he finished at first. But he improved. Slowly. His hands got tougher. His work got cleaner. He stopped checking his phone every 5 minutes. Started asking questions about the craft instead of just doing what he was told. One afternoon, 6 months in, I found him in the workshop after hours. He was working on a chair. Intricate spindle-back design. Way above his skill level. "That's ambitious," I said. He jumped. Didn't hear me come in. I wanted to try something harder. I examined his work. The joints were sloppy but enthusiastic. The grain was wrong on 2 of the legs, but he'd tried to match it. "It's terrible," I said honestly. His face fell. "But it's terrible in the right ways. You're pushing yourself. Making mistakes that teach you something." I picked up a chisel. "Here. Let me show you a better way to cut that mortise." We worked together for an hour. Didn't talk much except about the wood and the tools and the techniques. But something shifted. The air felt different. Lighter. When we finished, he stood back looking at the chair. Still imperfect, but better. "Thanks," he said quietly. "For what?" "For this. For not giving up on me, even though you should have." I didn't respond. Just cleaned the tools and put them away. Some things don't need words. But here's what Dorian didn't know. What nobody knew except me and the quiet hours of night when I couldn't sleep. I hadn't forgiven him. Not really. I was teaching him because that's what you do. You pass on knowledge. You help people grow. But trust. That was still broken. Maybe permanently. Love and trust aren't the same thing. I learned that the hard way. A year after Dorian started working, Victoria called. His ex-wife. Asked to meet me for coffee. She was nervous. Kept stirring her latte even though there was nothing left to stir. "He's different," she said. "The way he talks about work. About you. About himself. That's good. Is it real? Or is he just doing this to get back into your will?" The question was harsh but fair. I'd asked myself the same thing. "I don't know," I admitted. "Time will tell." She nodded. Left her coffee unfinished and walked out. Time did tell. 2 years after Dorian started working, we got a big commission. Custom office furniture for a downtown law firm. Expensive. High profile. The kind of job that makes or breaks reputations. I put Dorian on the lead team. Not because he was my son, because he'd earned it. He'd grown. Developed real skill. Showed up every day without fail for 24 months straight. The job went perfect. Client was thrilled. Wrote us a glowing review. Referred 3 more companies. Keegan pulled me aside after we delivered the final pieces. "Your kid's got talent. Real talent. He's not just doing this to make you happy. I know. You forgive him yet?" I didn't answer right away. Watched Dorian loading tools into the truck, laughing with one of the younger apprentices. "Getting there," I said finally. "Maybe." But forgiveness wasn't the real question anymore. The real question was whether I'd ever stop wondering when he'd leave me again. Whether I'd ever trust him to stay. 3 years later, a test came I never expected, and it would answer everything. The test came on a Tuesday. Keegan had a family emergency. His mother in Florida, heart attack, needed him there immediately. He left me in charge, said he'd be back in a week, maybe 2. That same day, we got hit with 3 problems at once. A major shipment delayed. A client threatening to pull a contract over a missed deadline. And our best craftsman quit without notice, leaving a complicated restoration project half-finished. I stood in the workshop at midnight, surrounded by chaos, feeling every one of my 74 years. Dorian was still there too. Hadn't left even though his shift ended 6 hours earlier. Go home, I told him. Nothing more we can do tonight. I can stay. Help you figure this out. I don't need help. I need sleep. But he didn't leave. Just started organizing tools, cleaning workstations, doing small tasks that needed doing. Why are you really still here? I asked finally. He stopped, turned to face me. Because 3 years ago you didn't leave me when you should have. Even after everything. You gave me a chance. So now when things get hard, I stay. That's what family does. Family. The word hung in the air between us. We haven't been family in a long time, I said quietly. I know. My fault. But I'm trying to fix that. Not by saying it, by doing it. By being here. By showing up. By not running when things get hard. Something in my chest cracked. Not broke. Cracked. Like ice in spring starting to thaw. Over the next week, Dorian proved himself in ways I didn't expect. He coordinated the shipment delay, called in favors, sweet-talked the client into extending the deadline. He personally finished the restoration project, working 18-hour days to meet the commitment. When Keegan got back, the crisis was handled. Business running smooth. Your son pulled this off? Keegan asked, looking at the completed projects. He did. Damn. Kid's got more in him than I thought. That evening, Dorian and I sat on the bench outside. Same spot we'd sat 3 years earlier when he first came back. The roses were blooming again. Deep red, like Elise loved. You did good work this week, I said. Thanks. Silence. Comfortable silence. The kind you can only have with people who've been through hell together and came out the other side. I'm never going to be able to take back what I did, he said eventually. Leaving you in Lisbon. Stealing everything. I carry that every day. Good. You should. But I want you to know, I'm not that person anymore. I don't know if you believe me, but it's true. I looked at him. Really looked. Saw the man he'd become instead of the boy I'd raised or the monster who'd betrayed me. Saw someone who'd fallen about as far as a person can fall and climbed back up one bloody-handed grip at a time. I believe you, I said. And I meant it. His eyes filled with tears. Dad. Don't get emotional on me. We've got work tomorrow. But I was smiling. First genuine smile I'd given him in 5 years. We sat there until the sun set, watching workers leave for the day, listening to the sounds of the city settling into evening. 2 men, a father and son, rebuilding something that was broken maybe past all fixing. But trying anyway. Because that's what you do. You try. Later that night, alone in my apartment, I pulled out Elisa's compass. Held it in my palm like I had in Lisbon, in that church basement, on that park bench. So you'll always find your way home, she'd said. I'd found my way back. Not to a house or a place, but to something harder to define. Purpose. Peace. Maybe even forgiveness, though I wasn't rushing it. Dorian still worked at the shop. Still showed up early, stayed late. We'd probably never have what we once had, that innocence, that blind trust. But we had something else now. Something built on scars and sawdust and second chances. The workshop thrived. We took on bigger projects, hired more people, became known for quality and integrity. Every piece we built carried the weight of our story. Broken things made whole, rough lumber shaped into beauty. When people asked about the Montrose in Montrose and Keegan Craftworks, I told them the truth. I was a father who lost everything and learned that losing everything was just the beginning. That betrayal doesn't destroy character. It reveals it. That the greatest revenge isn't anger or bitterness. It's rebuilding quietly, becoming stronger than before. And when people asked about my son, I told them he worked here. Started at the bottom, earned every promotion. That he was learning what I should have taught him from the beginning. That wealth earned without gratitude is a curse, but work done with integrity is a blessing. Some nights I still think about that hotel room in Lisbon. The empty bed. The missing wallet. The crushing realization that I'd been abandoned. But I don't think about it with pain anymore. I think about it with gratitude. Because that morning, when I woke up alone in a foreign country, the old Harold Montrose died. And someone stronger was born in his place. Life happened. Without my son at first. Then, slowly, with him again. Different. Harder. More honest. And that turned out to be enough. If this story moved you, if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, or if you've ever had to rebuild from nothing, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story. These are real life lessons from real people who refused to stay broken. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your story might inspire someone who needs to hear they're not alone. And remember, sometimes losing everything is just the universe clearing space for something better. Hit that subscribe button because next time, we have another powerful story about resilience, redemption, and what happens when the people who hurt us finally realize what they lost. Thank you for watching, and remember, the strongest steel goes through the hottest fire.